that. Sir Keir Starmer's battle to keep his party united appeared to intensify last night after several of his own MPs tried to force a Commons vote on a ceasefire in Gaza yesterday. And this came just hours after Bradford East MP Imran Hussain resigned from the shadow front bench so he could better advocate for a ceasefire. And those rebellious MPs may soon get their wish, as the SNP has tabled an amendment to the King's speech calling for an immediate truce in that war.
Look, across the Labour Party, we are united in condemning the terrorist attack by Hamas, in being clear about Israel's right to self-defence. There is a division on whether we should call for a humanitarian pause, which is my position, as I've set out very, very clearly, and some who think we should have a ceasefire, which again I've rejected very clearly in my Chatham House speech of last week, setting out the reasons for that.
OK, let's speak now to the former editor of LabourList, Peter Edwards, who joins me in the studio. Peter, the Palestinian problems rumble on. 11 councillors have now resigned. A minister, a frontbench minister, Imran Hussain. Apparently 2 more ministers on resignation watch. 350 councillors have written to Starmer demanding this ceasefire. And then the latest revelation overnight, Ben Soffer, Starmer's former head of digital organising, is a head honcho at this organisation that's the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign that's actually organising all of these controversial marches. The pressure is piling on over Palestine, isn't it?
There's an intense debate in the Labour Party. Of course, we've got to recognise that's nothing compared to the actual loss of life and suffering, both in Israel 4 weeks ago and then in Gaza now. But of course, Keir Starmer's a candidate to be Prime Minister, so it's right that he's challenged on his view. And you saw really there him explaining why he wants humanitarian pauses and the aid to get in, but doesn't think it's right to have a ceasefire, which I agree with, when there's still more than 200 Israeli hostages being held and really used as bargaining chips, which is a disgusting thing to contemplate.
That position is quite a moderate position. In fact, that's a Conservative position. It's Rishi Sunak's position, but it's not the position of a substantial number, it would appear, of Labour councillors and MPs and ministers and voters. But will this be an issue for them? There was some analysis at the weekend. It may cost the Labour Party a few seats, but do you think it'll be damaging in terms of their bid for power?
Well, in terms of the numbers, we've had 1 shadow minister resign. There have been a lot of stories about possibly more shadow cabinet ministers resigning, but so far none have resigned. But of course they'll be mindful of collective responsibility, and there's a particularly inflamed issue of collective responsibility in the Conservative Party. My view is that we all act according to our conscience. This is pretty much the #1 crisis in the world at the moment, so we all feel it very deeply. But also, I've been a Labour campaigner for nearly 20 years, and my general feeling is that people ordinarily vote on domestic policies rather than foreign policy, and that takes nothing away from the tragedy we're seeing unfold, but they vote on schools and hospitals and the economy.
But doesn't this feel like the ghosts of Corbynism rattling its chains once again? Of course, he was booted out of the party for claims of anti-Semitism. We've seen a huge rocket in anti-Semitic attacks. In fact, there are 188 arrests just yesterday around these marches and provoked since the invasion on October the 7th. And it just seems to quite a few voters that the Labour Party seem to be choosing the wrong side in this battle.
Well, it's absolutely not about choosing a side, and I think that's what Keir Starmer and, to his credit, Rishi Sunak have both been explicit about. You can be, as you are, outraged at the terrorist attack on Israel a month ago, but as equally distressed by the loss of civilian life in Gaza that we're seeing pretty much every day. So it's definitely not about picking sides. The other point I'd make is that the British public respects strong leaders, and they don't always have to agree with them, but they do respect consistency, and someone like in the Chatham House speech that Keir Starmer did, setting out their position, even though they know everyone won't agree with it, because it's obviously dangerous to change tack on something like international affairs.
I suppose, on the one hand, you're right. At least Starmer hasn't done a U-turn on this. You know, he's stood by his guns, which some would say is a rarity. Do you think, though, this tabled amendment, this vote, will have any impact? And what's the point of it? I mean, it will obviously damage the party. It will damage Starmer. He would like to whip them to not do this. But what are they trying to do? Well, just appease voters of a certain demographic, say the Muslim voters in their seats? So
obviously we've had the King's speech within the last week, and as I understand it, having looked into some of the processology, there was a motion tabled by the SNP, who are a smaller opposition party. The Speaker can pick up to 4 amendments. There's no guarantee this will be picked, but clearly it's a topic of intense debate in Parliament and across the world. If it does go to a vote, then clearly Labour MPs they'll either set out their view and vote for or against the Starmer strategy, or they'll abstain.
OK, Peter Evans, thank you as ever.